Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. Today I want to talk about some indirect nerfs that will be coming into bunker comp, specifically heroes like Orisa, Baptiste, all heroes that play in a composition where they sit on the high ground like you've seen in the gameplay, fighting from a distance, being really hard to move. The changes to knockback, the knockback distance being more consistent, and to a lesser extent heroes that are flying can now be knockbacked and slowed, does act as a bit of an indirect nerf to bunker comp as a whole, to Orisa, and even to an extent to Baptiste. I wanted to make this video now on the eve of the patch going in because there's a lot of excitement, of course, that a new meta is going to form when these changes come in. And I still think that that's very much the case. I do think that GOATS comp is going to diminish quite a bit. In my own ranked games, at least this season, I haven't really experienced any GOATS comp, to be honest. It's been all over the place with 2-2-2 compositions mostly, but this is more for the highest tiers and stuff. And to be honest, it's quite nice to not have that oppressive meta looming over everyone, regardless of whether you use it or not. But getting back on track, there is this element of what's going to happen next, and people are really excited that GOATS is going to completely die, and this bunker double sniper composition that people are looking forward to is going to come back in a big way. Depending on who you ask on what the new meta could be, a lot of people are saying bunker comp, which is just, Orisa, Junkrat, Bastion. Like the gameplay that you've seen on screen is a firm example of that, whereas some people are saying that double sniper is going to come back in a big way, which is very similar. These compositions do borrow certain elements, such as an Orisa and a Mercy. And there's a lot of pros, analysts, and the like surmising that bunker comp, which in this example we'll say is like Orisa, Junkrat, double snipers, Mercy, Diva, they will make a huge return in the meta, alongside of course the new hero Baptiste, that really does lend himself to this composition. The entire idea is to sit up on high ground and fight from a distance. A really good example of this composition being really strong is Temple of Anubis. You even have defending teams bringing out a Symmetra to begin with to teleport the Orisa on the high ground on the far back this area. It's very strong on certain maps and certain areas. Another example is control maps like Sanctum and Ilios, where you can't really run it as a Reinhardt. Sideshow went on about this in a recent video that we did with him, but you can't really run Reinhardt on these areas of maps because it's too easy to boop a Reinhardt into pits and into the depth below. So because of that, you see a lot of Orisa because it's a lot harder to move Orisa off the point, or at least it used to be. A lot of people would argue that bunker comp isn't a counter for GOATS, like people seem to assume. In fact, some would even argue that GOATS still count as bunker comps, but it does depend on the map. This is due to their ability to run through them or run onto an objective and basically force the bunker comp on the high ground or whatever to drop down or contest in any fashion. The indirect nerf to Orisa and bunker comps comes in with this change, knockback. The knockback distance is now more consistent, so it basically means that stuff like Lucio's boop, flail shot, even stuff like Pharah's concussive blast will knock targets further and more consistently. Pro player and streamer Red Shell did a really good video for Lucio showing all of these changes off, how it works and all that, and showed some of the interactions with all of these, and I'll link that in the description below. But generally, it's a lot easier to knock targets, and this is exactly why it's a lot stronger against bunker comps, and Orisa especially. We use the example of being on the back of Temple of Anubis like so. Before, you might see some daring Lucios trying to flank around to boot people off, but more often than not, he's not going to have a huge amount of success with it, especially when trying to boop an Orisa, where heroes like her and Diva, whilst they're firing, because they're slowed, become a lot harder to move and budge. But now with these changes, it should be a lot more consistent and much easier to knock these heroes from the high ground. As I mentioned, teams would come out with Symmetra, teleport the Orisa to the high ground, and then go back and change to something else. So basically, on this example at least, if an Orisa gets knocked to the low ground, she can't get back up there. All of the other heroes that are in this composition, Junkrat, Widow, even Baptiste and Mercy, can make their way back onto the high ground, but Orisa can't. But as I mentioned before, you also have the control map areas where Reinhardt got knocked into the pits below very easily, and now the same might be the case for Orisa. The changes themselves aren't drastic by any means. This isn't a case of, oh, you can't run bunker comp, but it certainly weakens its elements of what makes it strong. GOATS comp has no effective range, and it also has very little mobility, meaning that if an enemy team is fighting from a distance and can do damage from a distance, they're just good to sit and take that damage like sitting eggs. That's where GOATS can be really weak, and there's a lot of heroes that have had increases such as Junkrat's damage, Widow and Hanzo have had slight buffs, But when you have McCree and Soldier, basically all of the heroes that like to fight from distance in one way or another were buffed in this patch. So that's why a lot of people are going, oh yeah, Bunker Comp is going to be really strong right now. I think this is a smart change to put into it. It gives it some element of counterplay. I also do feel that these changes are going to be incredibly important for Baptiste too, simply because he is a hero that has to have his team in the right spot. He has his invulnerability field that he can place down, his ultimate, it all requires him to place it in the right position for him to be in the right position, and also his team. So if you have a Lucio, a Brigitte, a Pharah being able to knock people out of sight from the ultimate, or out of the range of the invulnerability field, you can start to see how that might be a bit of a problem for Baptiste. There's a structure that that composition really needs, and any form of chaos that can add to it really does make it weaker, especially if it can knock people into the line of a GOATS comp that, whilst it can't fight from a distance or get to certain spots, will run over you if they get the chance. I generally just don't want people to get carried away. I think all of us playing in competitive, things are going to be a lot better. Things are going to be much better, I think, to be honest. But in the pro scene, GOATS isn't completely dead. I think it's just going to be used in a lot of trace fashions. And whilst effectively we are waiting for news, I did want to highlight and be very clear at the fact that I don't think GOATS is completely dead. But much like Dive, it's going to be a composition that you use now and again. Like triple tank or quad tank, they are still compositions that are used in the game, but not an awful lot, and I think GOATS is basically going to become that. But I am really interested in hearing what you guys have to think about the whole situation. There's a lot of indirect changes and nerfs, and it'll be interesting to see how they are interacted with when this patch goes live. I'm very excited to play ranked, you know, with these changes going in, to see exactly what's going to happen. There's a strong chance as well that Baptiste and these patch changes will be in for the second stage of the Overwatch League. The first stage playoffs start next week, so I figured it was nice to give a shout out to Omen by HP, who we've been working with quite a lot recently. We've done some pretty fun videos going over the league as a whole, some of the interesting compositions used there. So I'm very excited to see exactly what happens in the Overwatch League in the future, with a new hero, with these new changes, how Overwatch is going to look in a month's time. Not to mention they are the PC providers, they make some really good stuff. Our laptops that we have are exceptional, so I figured that they needed a bit of a shout out, so thanks again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.